Beneath the evening sky's muted blues at the very threshold of night's embrace, there existed a peculiar order of peacefulness, yet within this calm rested a world fraught with muted conflicts and silent struggles. He was by all means a man of resolve, not of grand proclamations or boisterous confrontations, but of profound silences. There are men who are broken, and there are men who in the undercurrents of quiet betrayal become keener, honing their senses in the silence like a craftsman refining a blade. It is such a paradox where intensity thrives not in words but in the echo between unspoken truths. For those who navigate the tumultuous seas of emotional deceit, the quiet ones carry the weight of the world differently. You may question why one would endure without confrontation, why the reigning silent ones choose to remain shrouded in apparent submission. It is the depths of night, the void of expression, where their strength lies dormant. To wield silence is to understand power in its most formless essence, and it leaves those unaware blind to a storm that broods beneath apparent tranquility. In the dance between darkness and light, the ego and the heart, there resides a battlefield where warriors never draw their swords. He, the silent king by choice, betrayed by those he held dearest, nestles in the shadow of quietude. She, with her charms and manipulations, believes his silence is an admission of defeat, a tapestry woven from threads of underestimation. But how misguided she is. Some betrayals echo louder in silence than in screams, spiraling through the corridors of whispered thoughts and unseen agonies. She mistook quiet for cowardice, yet there are those who understand that some kings do not roar, they calculate, they strategize, and when the time is nigh, they do not conquer, they erase. In this landscape of strained family dynamics and the ceaseless tug-of-war between allegiance and autonomy, the unspoken holds as much potency as the declared. The serenity of silence is but a canvas upon which monstrous battles are painted. You wonder perhaps why suffer in silence when justice could be exacted here and now. But here lies the unfathomable complexity of the heart. Silence is not always compliance. Sometimes it is a brilliantly laid trap for the unsuspecting, the ultimate expression of resistance. Such is the intricate dance of human connections where emotions intertwine with strategies, and the heart, wounded yet resolute, orchestrates its own redemption. Within every silent figure stained by betrayal echoes an ancestral spirit of resilience. It invokes the question, a whispering specter haunting the condemned halls of the forsaken, what layers of strength and subterfuge can one harbor behind placid facades? When a man bears silence as his sword and shield, it holds the essence of waiting for the moment when the silence cracks sharply across the stillness, bringing forth reckonings that eloquence could never convey. Possessed by the depths of introspection, the silent one is a keeper of time's secrets, holding keys to the galleries of retribution. His solitude is neither surrender nor retreat, but a chrysalis within which a metamorphosis of spirit begins to take shape. Within such silent beginnings, whispered, is the promise of transformation. From the echoes of forsakenness will emerge a tableau of reclaimed strength, each step upon this path, a declaration of independence against the oppressive cadence of deceit. As night draws its veil tighter around the world, one can almost hear the inevitability unfolding, a quiet revolution born from the ashes of betrayal, painted across the vast canvas of silence. She assumed his silence a canvas of compliance, but in her misjudgment, she has ignited the fires of his rebirth. In the space between words, in the hush of unvoiced vows, rises the anticipation of an awakening. He will not thunder. Instead, he shall teach through the art of erasure, a profound lesson in the enduring supremacy of silence. It was never acquiescence. It was the prelude to liberation, the harbinger of vengeance refined and immutable. Here then lies the answer to the heart's unyielding question. Silence is not just passive, it's a poised art form of intrepid defiance waiting to reclaim its narrative. As Rose sat in her time-worn armchair, the reality of Ethan's brazen announcement mingled with disbelief and disappointment, a thick fog clouding her vision. How casually he had decreed their sudden intrusion, as if her home, her carefully curated sanctuary, was merely a guest house for his convenience. His confident demeanor, bordering on arrogance, echoed through her mind, a maddening undercurrent that refused to quieten. Her resolve solidified, hardening in the furnace of her racing thoughts. No, she would not be a passive participant in this charade. This was her space, her autonomy, something she had earned through years of toil and independence. She refused to let it be eroded by the cavalier decisions of someone she once cradled in her arms. Her determination, much like a phoenix rising from the ashes, began to unfurl its wings. A silent yet resolute declaration of resistance gathered strength within her. Rose had long acquainted herself with the unnecessary burdens imposed by familial expectations, a landscape she knew all too well. But this time the script had to change. A new page had to be written, one where she would stand not in the shadows cast by manipulation, but in the bright light of her own strength and boundaries. The plan, unhurried yet inevitable, began to germinate in her mind. She would not dismantle her son's plans with noise or chaos. She would do it with the deft touch of a careful strategist, someone who knew just where to apply pressure to achieve results. Her thoughts coalesced around her friend Sharon, a stalwart force who had time and again demonstrated the power of solidarity among women of their generation. The idea of reaching out to Sharon was not just appealing, it was imperative. She would offer support, clarity, and perhaps the legal insight Rose needed. Ethan's visit might have planted seeds of trepidation, but with each passing moment the fear was being replaced by pragmatism and clarity. Rose began to envision her countermoves, plotting each step with precision. This was uncharted territory for her, but driven by an instinctual will, her mind raced ahead of any emotional distractions. She recognized the manipulation embedded in Ethan's confidence as a veiled attempt to disarm and dissuade her. But she was prepared to reclaim the narrative, to reshape it into one of empowerment and self-preservation. The familial ties that once bound her with blind adherence were now the chains she was intent on loosening. She would assert her needs and boundaries in a language that could not be mistaken for anything but the truth. This quiet determination transformed into a sort of inner armor, a shield crafted from years of experience and the wisdom of countless small battles won and lost. As she replayed the events in her mind, her path became clearer, each step illuminated by conviction and the unmistakable drive for self-respect. It was not about vengeance in the traditional sense, but more about reclaiming what had wrongly been assumed by others. Rose had reached a pivotal moment of realization and acceptance, comprehending that true strength lay not in loud declarations, but in subtle, unwavering resolve. With a renewed sense of determination, Rose knew what needed to be done. Her journey towards autonomy would not be marred by guilt or fear. Instead, it would be paved by the clear understanding that her life, her decisions, and her space were not mere appendages to the wishes of others, no matter how closely related they were. This new chapter would be hers to write, and she would wield the pen with the authority and grace that came from a life executed with intentional dignity. The days following Ethan's departure were anything but serene. They were filled with contemplative silences and the steady rhythm of Rose's newfound resolve. Within the quiet interludes of her daily routine, a formidable plan was beginning to take shape. It wasn't fueled by anger, but by the sheer necessity of reclaiming what was rightfully hers. Her thoughts were not a chaotic storm, but rather a meticulous mapping of the steps she would undertake to reset the boundaries that had so blatantly been dismissed. Rose wasn't seeking vengeance. She was seeking justice within her private domain. Her first action broke the stillness she needed, an ally seasoned in the battles of life, one who understood the nuances of human dynamics. Sharon was precisely that ally. Their friendship had been a haven for Rose, and now it was becoming a conduit through which her quiet strength would find greater voice. Sharon's counsel would add layers of wisdom and strategy to the plan that would ensure that Rose's rightful autonomy remained intact. Tea was brewing when Sharon walked into Rose's home, bringing with her an aura of seasoned wisdom and optimism. As the aroma filled the room, so did their conversation. Rose laid bare her predicament not with self-pity but with clarity and a subtle declaration of her intent to change the status quo. Sharon listened intently, nodding at the familiar tunes of familial expectations and the unspoken contracts of obedience and sacrifice. The two women dissected Ethan's assumptions, analyzing every angle until a robust strategy emerged from their exchange. Sharon advised, beginning with small, undeniable adjustments, measure by measure, reclaiming her space. It was about reinforcing her identity as an independent entity rather than a convenient afterthought. Together they explored the legal and technical facets involved in asserting her rights over her own household. With every word spoken, Rose's armor seemed to become more tangible, her strategy more cohesive. As the afternoon faded into evening, Sharon left, leaving behind a friend more resolute, more centered in her purpose. Rose felt the thrill of having shared her burdens and plans, drawing strength from Sharon's assurances and pragmatic perspective. There was a distinct satisfaction in knowing that she was no longer alone in this crusade. While Ethan assumed dominance by default, Rose was silently transforming into the principal architect of her life's narrative. In this awakening, a revelation took root. Rose didn't need to match Ethan's audacity with rivalry or vocal protest. Instead, she had the chance to reforge relationships on terms that honored her dignity. This journey wasn't about breaking ties, but about fortifying them with respect, recalibrating the axis on which their family revolved. It was the dawn of her emerging as a self-respecting individual. The murmurs of her plans were whispered during quiet moments, not shared aloud, maintaining a calm exterior that belied the calculated orchestration beneath. These quiet yet significant steps were building towards a confrontation that would not be marked by chaos but by a redefinition of the fundamental elements of their familial relationship. She was prepared to face the coming challenges with poise and unswerving conviction that her position was more than justified. The script for Rose's next moves was stealthy yet powerfully written. There would be no need for grand gestures. A simple, calm assertion of her intentions when the moment came would suffice. Her situation wasn't unique, but her response would be all her own, a testament to the strength women draw from life's trenches, a victory for respect over intrusion. As night fell, Rose felt a serene certainty envelop her. The shifting balance between compliance and autonomy was no longer a daunting shadow but a peaceful reclamation of self. She envisioned each step forward, anticipating the resistance she might meet, yet fearless and resolute. In deliberately refurbished silences, she composed the prelude to her confrontation with Ethan, driven not by conflict but by the promise of personal sovereignty. Thus, the stage was set for a transformed existence, one where Rose's voice, actions, and choices would emphatically declare, "I am here, I am whole, and my life, my choices are my own." The calm was merely the foundation upon which she was constructing a monument to the dignity she was regaining, one brick of self-respect at a time. In the early hours when the world begins to stir, Rose found herself awakening not to the usual tranquility that marks the start of a new day, but to a tangible sense of purpose, layering the morning light. This day was significant, a milestone in her evolving narrative. Her plan was set into motion. Each move was a step closer to reclaiming what had silently slipped away under the guise of familial duty. The contrast of her intention against the backdrop of historical submission simplified her resolve. It was time for action. Calling Sharon was the first task on her list, a seasoned ally whose counsel Rose had come to trust. She picked up the phone, her fingers moving with a calm resolve, and dialed Sharon's number. The conversation was direct, echoing the strength of shared understanding among those who've navigated the labyrinth of family obligations. Sharon listened as Rose outlined her strategy, acknowledging each careful thought with a knowing nod, even though the phone hid such gestures from view. The foundations of Rose's resolve were reinforced with Sharon's unwavering support, a testament to solidarity among women who'd walked similar paths. This alliance was more than just friendship. It was a pact to uphold dignity, a shield against the intangible battles that often plagued women in their later years. The day progressed with a sense of quiet determination, Rose meticulously charting her course, an unseen architect, reconstructing the architecture of her life from its very roots. The house once thought to be bustling with the assumed arrival of Ethan and his family now stood as a fortress of her autonomy, each wall a reminder of her decision to take back control. When Martha, Ethan's determined wife, arrived unannounced later that week under the guise of small talk, Rose remained cordial but unwavering. The conversation flowed with superficial politeness, yet every word spoken was layered with subtexts of manipulation familiar to Rose. Martha's visit was a facade, thinly veiled with false sincerity, leaving traces of the family's growing impatience with the unexpected resistance. Rose anticipated Martha's intentions, recognizing the intricate emotional dance designed to extract a compliance that no longer resided within her. The conversation revealed little secrets of an impending move, and though the words were dropped with nonchalance, Rose saw through the gentle prying and deflected each attempt gracefully. Her composure remained her greatest ally, a steady lighthouse in a sea of familial expectations, signaling a change in tides. This encounter only solidified her conviction, arming her with the fortitude to face the manipulative tactics without flinching. As Martha departed with more questions than answers, Rose knew the message was clear: she was no longer a participant in the theater of assumed obligations. The days ahead saw Rose engrossed in her preparations, maneuvering through the complexities of her legal and financial standing. Her resolve to safeguard her independence demanded meticulous attention to detail. Each paper signed a personal declaration of the autonomy she was reclaiming. She realized that these actions were not merely administrative but actual manifestations of the inner changes taking solid form, providing a sturdy foundation for her future. And so her network expanded. As whispers of her defiance spread, other women, inspired by her stance, reached out, offering support and solidarity. This growing camaraderie expanded beyond her initial circle, birthing a community anchored in mutual respect and shared journeys. The collective narrative of perseverance created a backdrop of hope, against which Rose's individual struggle seemed less daunting. Throughout this period, Rose's encounters with Sharon multiplied their exchanges, rich with shared wisdom passed down through lived experience. Together, they crafted Rose's plan into something more profound than a mere reclamation. It became a beacon for others. Sharon offered insights and Rose executed with precision, each step a strategic movement in the campaign for self-determination. Their friendship had transcended conventional bounds, becoming a testament to the power of unity and the undying spirit of those who choose to fight for their right to exist on their own terms. In the silence of her solitude, Rose found peace instead of emptiness, the void filled with the authentic presence of self-discovery. Her decisions, once dismissed as dreams, now shimmered as tangible realities in the morning light, no longer confined to the shadows of suppressed desires. This was no war waged against her kin, but a resolute journey towards wholeness, a graceful rebellion against the silent, unseen chains that bound too many before her. Rose knew there would soon come a day when she would stand unyielding before her family, their faces a mixture of disbelief and curiosity at the power claimed by the gentle matriarch they thought they knew. But until then, she would continue to build, with each choice layering another brick into the monument of dignity she was erecting, one born of years lost and at last found. The moment carried an odd sense of clarity, a recognition of familiar tactics dressed up as care and concern. Martha, Ethan's wife, sat across from Rose in the sunlit living room, her manner composed but eyes darting with intention. The conversation initially meandered through mundane familial updates, eventually arriving at the impending move. It was a dance of subtle manipulation, an attempt to quietly coax Rose into relinquishing her agency without overt confrontation. Martha's tone dripped with benignity as she expressed how convenient it would be for everyone, especially with the children needing supervision apparently best provided by Rose. It was a familiar undercurrent, a psychological chess game that preyed upon a mother's desire to help a grandmother's supposed destiny to nurture. But Rose had shifted. In what could have previously felt like coercion, she now saw a transparent attempt at emotional maneuvering. The old Rose might have yielded under the weight of perceived obligation, but not today. Sitting in the warmth of her resolute decision, Rose responded with a calm detachment that mirrored Martha's own tone. She acknowledged the plan but swiftly dismantled any assumptions of compliance or endorsement. It was a masterstroke of emotional disengagement, one that Martha did not expect. This was the moment where the internal transformation of Rose gleamed in its external clarity. Martha attempted a different tactic, weaving a tapestry of concern about Rose's alleged loneliness. With practiced sincerity, she floated the notion that the company of grandchildren would surely lift Rose's spirits. It was a well-aimed arrow, one designed to prick at the vulnerability of isolation, but Rose, fortified by the quiet strength of self-discovery and the empowering counsel from Sharon, let the arrow fall flat. The conversation was a game of psychological tricks that Martha should have known to play softly. This was her attempt to instill guilt masked as kindness, but Rose had learned to recognize such performances. She had practiced detachment, learning to observe the play of familial expectation without participating. This ability was new, a precious tool in a landscape overrun with demands on one's loyalty and service, disguised as familial love. The encounter was revealing. For Martha, it was a knock against a wall where a door once stood open. For Rose, it was confirmation that resolve could be gentle, yet unyielding. The power dynamics were shifting, with Rose steering her rudder, charting a course towards her own future. Empowerment does not require a declaration, it needs only the subtlety of exercised choice, the quiet assurance in one's own path. Martha departed, the waves of tension unresolved and swirling in her wake. She left without explicit confrontation, but the reverberations of her visit lingered in the silence of the room. Rose sat there feeling the aftermath without succumbing to the temptation of doubt. For Rose, the showdown was another step on her self-determined journey, an additional stone laid on the path of her autonomy. In the privacy of her thoughts, Rose acknowledged the emotional upheaval yet refused to dwell on it. Instead, she chose to channel her energy into reinforcing the boundaries she had so carefully begun to establish. Each challenge was carving her into a woman who realized that self-worth was not tethered to familial approval. The battle was against assumptions and inherited roles more than against individuals. Rose understood that freedom was not simply granted by refusing entry to her home, it was a continuous negotiation of space, mental, emotional, and physical. Her newfound clarity provided a vantage point from which to distinguish between care and compliance. In Martha's attempted manipulation, she had witnessed a reflection of societal expectations turned personal. The experience with Martha was not a confrontation, but rather a silent confirmation of the metamorphosis Rose was undergoing. Relationships would shift, expectations would recalibrate, boundaries once non-existent were now visibly defined. Rose's actions were not just for herself but a testament to others in her orbit, a beacon highlighting the possibility of breaking traditional molds, embracing self-love without apology. In the quiet reaffirmation of her space, Rose felt neither victorious nor vindictive. Instead, she found solace in the knowledge that her life was not to be molded by external desires, but crafted by the authenticity she was learning to embrace. In doing so, Rose realized that her residence was no longer merely a physical location, but a sanctuary where choice reigned supreme. This was not a process of rejection, but rather a carving of acceptance that familial ties could be enjoyed and cherished without sacrificing one's identity. Orchestration of her family's expectations could continue, but the centerpiece was no longer dictated by others. Rose had become the architect of her new reality, and in finding peace, she had found power. Ethan's arrival at Rose's doorstep was like the crackle of thunder announcing an impending storm. His demeanor was laden with simmering frustration, the kind that had been festering in the shadows far too long. The daughter he once knew had transformed before him, an enigma he couldn't comprehend, a challenge he never expected. In his eyes, Rose saw not just anger but a well of misguided guilt, the kind that can grip a man when he feels the very foundations of his expectations shifting beneath him. "You can't just do this," Ethan barked, his voice pitched with incredulity. He spoke with the authority of someone unaccustomed to dissent within the family hierarchy. The idea that his plans might not be welcomed was an affront to the implicit power dynamics that had kept the family in check for years. Rose felt the chill of the confrontation yet remained resolute. Her heart, steeled by years of self-neglect, was now a fortress of serenity. The person who once might have wavered under the pressure was gone. In its place stood a woman whose strength emanated not from aggression, but from an unassailable core of self-respect and clarity. "Ethan," she began, her voice a calm thread through the storm. "I understand you're upset. This isn't just about you, though. It's about me too, about my life." There it was, the unmistakable glint of defiance, not born out of rebellion but from a place of profound empowerment. Rose was not simply defending herself, she was setting the boundaries she had long let others trample upon. As Ethan drew breath to retort, he found himself caught in the quiet power of her gaze. The words he intended as weapons dissolved into the ether, leaving a more vulnerable truth in their stead. For a moment the air trembled with the unspoken realization that this was not the same mother he used to know, malleable to his will and opinions. Rose pressed on each word, a steady step forward towards autonomy. "I've spent a lifetime caring for others, putting everyone else's needs above my own, but now I choose differently. That doesn't mean I love you any less, but it does mean I am choosing to love myself too." The realization slowly dawned on Ethan. It was not just his plans being thwarted, it was the very paradigm of their relationship being reconstructed. His frustration, once a boiling kettle of indignance, began to cool as comprehension seeped in. What he saw as betrayal was indeed his mother standing her ground, redefining the parameters of her identity not as his mother or as his long-standing accommodator, but as Rose, an individual in her own right. "Look, I never intended for things to get like this," Ethan said, his tone softer, no longer fueled by the raw heat of anger, but by an undercurrent of resigned understanding. The redirection of his assumptions began the painstaking process of opening the door to tolerance and respect, a process neither instantaneous nor without friction but nonetheless underway. Rose recognized the moment as pivotal. Her stand was not an affront but an assertion, not a rejection of her past responsibilities but a redefinition of her present and future ones. Ethan's understanding was the precursor to a healthier relationship, one grounded in mutual respect rather than duty and obligation. The interaction drew to a close, the tension diffusing into a less tangible but more constructive dialogue, one that would likely continue in the form of whispered reflections long after Ethan had left. Rose's quiet empowerment served as a reminder that boundaries once fiercely protected not only shielded oneself but also forged relationships anew, inviting reconnection on equal terms. In the wake of Ethan's retreat, Rose stood by the window watching as he drove away, taking with him the specters of a dynamic that once held both of them captive. The air was lighter now, the shackles of expectation unlocked. This confrontation, while tempestuous, was not an end but a necessary reawakening, a step towards a family structure that acknowledged strength in individuality and unity in respect. Rose's journey still held many challenges. The insistence of tradition would echo, the murmurs of dissent from extended family would persist. But like a ship standing resilient against the tides, she would steer her life's course with newfound confidence and autonomy. Each decision moment of defiance and assertion of will stitched together the fabric of her identity, crafting a life where she was not merely a player in someone else's play, but the director of her own fate. Rose's newfound autonomy was not just emotional but required tangible action in the realm of finance and law. The intricate dance of securing her independence involved more than resolve. It demanded strategic foresight and precision. It begins with Rose evaluating her financial standing, seeking to untangle the complexities of shared assets and familial ties. She understands that financial independence is more than just a safeguard. It's a declaration of self-sufficiency that reinforces her newfound boundaries. Her first step is consulting Mr. Talbot, an experienced estate attorney known for his discretion and insight into family entanglements. His office brims with accolades and a quiet reassurance that comes from decades of navigating the choppy waters of familial disputes. Rose sits across from him, her demeanor resolute as she elaborates on her situation. The conversation transcends mere legal jargon into a strategy meeting, one where Rose outlines her priorities and seeks to shield her assets from unwanted claims. Mr. Talbot nods approvingly, probing with pertinent questions to ensure every angle is considered. He identifies existing loopholes that could potentially be exploited by those seeking to undermine her autonomy. The room fills with purpose as they draft a new will, establish a trust, and reassess property holdings. Each document signed, each notarization complete, underscores Rose's commitment to her path, fortifying her place as mistress of her own fate. Such preparations are the unsung heroics of self-preservation. Often overlooked in the fervor of familial bonds, securing financial independence is a defiant act against the tide of external pressures that expect compliance. Rose recognizes this as she leaves Mr. Talbot's office, bolstered by the legal fortifications now in place. Her actions extend beyond protecting her financial autonomy. In decisive movements, Rose initiates the change of deeds and titles, placing everything squarely under her name. There's a cathartic element to this process, a shedding of old ties shackled in duty replaced by the certainty that her decisions are her own. The relief is palatable, each signed line a liberation from outdated expectations of servitude. Rose knows she might be perceived as the antagonist in this narrative by some, a woman who, by seeking autonomy, disrupts the comfortable status quo that others enjoyed at her expense. But the antagonism is a misrepresentation of her intent, one that fails to see the strength in her cause. Her actions are a testament to the power of saying no, of redefining roles traditionally assigned and historically unexamined. As word of her legal restructuring spreads through the family grapevine, whispers of discord continue. It's not unexpected, often resistance lingers in the shadows of change. Yet Rose remains undeterred, reinforced by the wisdom that accompanies understanding one's rights and the power to enforce them. Each murmur of dissent serves only to underline her resolve, igniting a steely confidence fueled by the tangible proof of her independence. This isn't just a legal battle nor merely a financial tussle, it's an assertion of Rose's entitlement to live life unapologetically on her terms. In the legalese and signatures lies the heart of a woman reclaimed, a testament to resilience and the unwavering pursuit of respect. Her autonomy echoes, reverberating through the halls of her home, a home she now welcomes and guards under her command. The tale is not one of simple defiance or rebellion. Instead, it's a mosaic of understanding that though the past resides within her, it does not define the script of the future she's determined to write. The signatures inked onto paper are more than transactions. They are symbols of her emancipation from roles unconsciously inherited. For those who stand witness to Rose's journey, let it serve as a beacon, whether as a call to action or a reminder of possibilities untapped. If you should ever find yourself in a position where your autonomy and voice are in the balance, remember Rose's steadfast path to reclaiming hers. Consider where new boundaries might need to be drawn, where whispered doubts could give rise to determined steps forward. Realize where financial and legal empowerment might be the cornerstone for greater freedom, crafting your life with the same deliberate intention that has become Rose's own hallmark. As the day unfolded with a certain foreboding inevitability, the air was tense with an unspoken battle of wills. Rose stood at the threshold of her home, a fortress she had painstakingly built and defended. Across the driveway, a caravan of cars descended upon the scene, the leading vehicle unmistakably driven by Ethan, her eldest, whose entitlement seemed larger than life itself. It wasn't just Ethan's demeanor that spoke of expectations unmet. Behind him was Martha, his wife, and their troop of children, luggage in tow. The grand family entrance bore an uncanny resemblance to the ceremonial triumphs witnessed in ancient tales, where the conquerors returned home with spoils in hand. But this time, the presumed spoils were not trinkets or trophies, but the very essence of Rose's independence. Ethan stepped forward, his walk exuding a sense of self-assuredness, a blueprint of control, heavily reliant on an outdated sense of familial obligation he'd banked on exploiting. The day's setting was rife for the confrontation that would etch a new chapter in the annals of their family legend, one no longer murky with submission, but luminescent with Rose's indomitable spirit. The moment Rose denied entry, it wasn't merely the physical barrier of a closed door that stood before them. It was an insurmountable barricade fortified by newfound respect and stakes laid down not in ink alone, but in steely resolve. Ethan, caught off guard by this unexpected resistance, faltered, unable to comprehend this paradigm shift. His vision of triumph did not include a defiant refusal, the symbolic reclamation of personal space that Rose wielded effortlessly. In that pivotal moment, Ethan's realization came crashing down. What lay before him was not merely a mother tired and constrained by decades of familial duty, but a liberated woman armed with the law and wisdom of her journey. The drama of the afternoon revealed growing fissures that Ethan in his arrogance had overlooked. Rose was no longer a predictable chapter in the narrative of his life, but a new story altogether. The clash did not roar with the typical intensity of raised voices or impassioned arguments. It was subtle, quieter perhaps, but more profound. Martha, observing with calculative eyes, silently urged, relenting through patient glances, hoping to avert a power play that was decisively tilting in Rose's favor. Yet on the scene there was no tremor in Rose's stance, no hesitation in her speech. Her decision stood like a cornerstone of virtue, unyielding and firm. As the family retreated, each step away serving as an indelible mark of her victory, the message resounded with clarity. This was no longer the dominion of unspoken sacrifices and compromises made in the name of expectation. It was a reclaimed territory governed by the rules of self-respect and autonomy. The family caravan's slow retreat was witnessed by neighbors hidden behind curtains, their own quiet encouragement lending strength to Rose's defiance against roles imposed by time and tradition. Ethan's attempt to backpedal, laden with conciliatory rhetoric, was met with Rose's unperturbed calm, a standpoint he could no longer navigate or negotiate with the inadequate currency of guilty evocations and past intimacies. Rose's very act of closing the door that afternoon opened up a channel of empowerment so profound that it started reshaping the family mythos. Rather than a tale of rebellion, it became a story of necessary evolution, a realignment of roles that demanded to be perceived not as insolence, but as an assertion of credible dignity. The grand family showdown that unfolded was not an isolated incident, but rather the amalgamation of seeds sown long ago, now harvested through courage and understanding. Rose's stance became a flickering beacon within familial landscapes everywhere, urging introspection and a reevaluation of assumptions long held and unquestioned. As Ethan's car disappeared from view, what remained was an overwhelming silence that was anything but empty. It was filled with the echoes of past selves, applauding Rose's metamorphosis from what was once deemed a simple caretaker into a guardian of her destiny. This was the turning point around which futures would pivot, the moment where the ideals of unconditional giving were rewritten with clauses of mutual respect and rightful autonomy. In the days that followed, there lingered an underlying recognition of the triumph it marked, not only for Rose but for the quiet thousands who saw themselves mirrored in her stand. The confrontation thus became a proclamation, a call that carried across invisible networks, inspiring others to seek justice within their own hierarchies, armed not with rebellion, but with rightful assertions of identity and freedom. Amidst the swirling complexities of familial expectations lay tensions eager to be unveiled. Following the showdown, Rose found herself up against a new adversary, her extended family enmeshed in the traditions and beliefs that bound them to outdated doctrines of family loyalty. These shadowy figures, well-versed in applying the weight of collective judgment, emerged as enablers of the conventional pressures Rose was now determined to resist. The quiet judgment came first, as whispers, furtive glances exchanged over obligatory dinners, each one weighted with an unspoken censure. Rose's actions, her bold defiance, were interpreted as a betrayal of familial duty in their eyes, an unraveling of the carefully woven narrative that held generations together. Here in the arena of braided kinship, Rose stood a solitary figure, adamant in her pursuit of personal sovereignty. She was not alone in her experiences. Her story echoed those of countless women whose roles traditionally demanded unconditional sacrifice, often at the expense of their own desires and identities. Yet, as the criticisms mounted, a peculiar realization began to dawn within Rose. The reproach she faced was not born out of malicious intent, but rather a fearful adherence to age-old structures that resisted the unpredictability of change. Her extended family, guardians of entrenched beliefs, bore the same yokes they now hoped to fasten upon Rose's shoulders. This understanding did not lessen her resolve, but deepened her empathy, sparking an internal conflict that balanced assertiveness with compassion. Such moments of societal expectation are not uncommon. Women bound by these invisible chains often find themselves pushed toward lives that reflect the values of their forebears rather than their own. The choice between appeasing the collective and affirming personal dreams is fraught with emotional and psychological challenges. Rose's journey highlighted the perils and possibilities of facing this relentless dichotomy, a beacon for those willing to navigate the stormy seas of tradition and innovation. What made Rose's situation even more complex was the layered pressure from individuals whose respect she valued. These were family members with whom histories were not easily unraveled. Though intent on preserving established norms, their disquiet served as both an obstacle and a gauge of progress. Each moment weighed heavy with implications, pivotal instances capable of redefining relationships and perceptions. Rose's choice to stand firm was thus not only a declaration of independence but also a loving gesture towards those who lamented the loss of their old world. Despite the engulfing cloud of discord, Rose remained unyielding. She drew strength from the knowledge that identity, though interconnected with heritage, must evolve unfettered by the constraints of ancestral dictates. Her resistance became a silent protest not against those she loved but against the perpetuation of a framework incapable of accommodating self-actualization. Such a balancing act was not easily maintained, yet fortified by newfound self-awareness and the support of covert allies, Rose pressed on. This wider family dynamic and the inherent pressures imbued Rose's journey with layers of complexity. Beyond discovering her voice, she was crafting a crusade for those silenced beneath the weight of expectation. Her actions contained revolutionary seeds, simple yet potent tools wielded against inertia and complacency. Each step forward resounded with an invitation, encouraging introspection among those poised to follow her path. The tension with her extended family ultimately set the stage for understanding the societal context in which many women navigate similar challenges. By standing apart, Rose wasn't merely rejecting the norm. She was advocating for the expansion of a narrative inclusive of autonomy and personal fulfillment. The whisperings that buzzed with discontent transitioned slowly into silence as coherence began to replace chaos, a newfound respect that threads its way through generations and cultures alike. In redefining her relationship with tradition, Rose was envisioning a broader horizon for herself and others, transforming familial confrontation into a catalyst for collective growth. The measures of respect and acknowledgement introduced by Rose began to permeate the family fabric, creating dialogue where there had been only dissent. Heritage seen through her eyes acquired a fresh sheen, abundant not just with commitment to others but with room for individuality and imagination. Thus, the tale of resistance morphed into one not solely of liberation, but of connection bound by a personal code and rising above the expectations of the past. Eyes that judged with skepticism now observed with curiosity, and the space was opened for a more genuine communication, embracing the realm of diverse possibilities awaiting on the other side of convention. Through the pressure of tradition and expectation, Rose designed a legacy not intended to dismiss the old ways, but to integrate the newfound consciousness that her circumstances demanded. Rose had discovered the power that lay dormant within her, a power forged through the harmonies of shared experiences and collective strength embodied by the women around her. In the intimate circles of friendship woven over time, she found not only camaraderie, but an unspoken understanding that colored her resolve with shades of empathy and solidarity. These women, with their own scars from battles fought in silence, came together in a tapestry of wisdom that only those who have journeyed through life's complexities can weave. Sharon, ever the bastion of wisdom and gentle nudging, had become more than a friend. She was a confidant, a strategist whose insights illuminated paths that seemed shadowed under familial strains. Her advice was infused with a spirit of justice, bridging the gaps between emotion and logic, guiding Rose in reinforcing her newfound autonomy. These allies were not just supporters, they were architects of a new narrative for Rose, whispering tales of resilience that transcended the mere acts of survival, morphing into thriving. The gatherings with these women unfolded into sessions of mutual empowerment, where each story shared was a brick in the fortress of collective wisdom. Women of varying ages, linked not by blood but by shared aspirations, spoke of their own reclamations, fueling each other's courage to defy the unyielding pressures of expected silence. Sharon, recounting tales of her struggles with balancing societal expectations and personal fulfillment, injected a sense of urgency in Rose's journey. In these moments, the immensity of her challenge felt less daunting. After all, what she faced now was not solely hers but part of a larger tapestry that spanned generations. Navigating these waters required Rose to craft a strategy steeped not just in emotion but in unyielding determination and logic. As counseled by Sharon, she meticulously researched her rights, seeking legal insight to ensure her choices stood on solid ground. The conversations among these women revealed common pitfalls. There was talk of relenting under emotional manipulations, disguised as familial concern of unwarranted guilt, overshadowing one's autonomy. Rose listened, internalizing these lessons, steeling her resolve to not be swayed by the familiar tides of persuasion. In time, Rose understood the potency of this communal exchange. It was within these dialogues that notions of revamping traditional narratives took root. They collectively confronted antiquated ideas, dissecting them to construct lives unfettered by obsolete customs. The very act of standing firm was an act of rebellion and reconstruction. Their independence was not a luxury, but a rightful inheritance. Rose marveled at how the lines of alliance blurred familial and communal bonds, creating a network that fortified personal boundaries more resolutely than blood ties had ever done. Inevitably, the wisdom shared illuminated the path forward, urging Rose to embrace her role as an example for others facing similar conflicts. Her actions began to resonate beyond her immediate circle, transforming her journey into a beacon for those observing closely, silently battling the same expectations. Rose realized that her strength, once discovered, was contagious. Her resolve served as an invitation for others to step into their own stories with confidence and clarity. Within this ebb of support and empowerment, she found herself not battling alone, but at the helm of a minor revolution, her decisions supported by a chorus of agreement and encouragement. Conversations morphed into strategies, strategies into actions, and gradually into a legacy of independence and respect. Rose's journey was no longer solitary. It was part of a collective ascent toward a horizon defined by choice, empowerment, and mutually fostered resilience. In the solidarity with her allies, she found not only comfort but a challenge, a call to continue pushing beyond the boundaries imposed by generations of tradition. It demanded a reimagining of her world, not as it had been handed down to her, but as something she had the agency to define for herself and others. Here, amidst shared laughter, tears, and wisdom born from lived experiences, Rose charted the continuation of her journey, a journey marked by reverence for her individuality and commitment to shared progress. Her steps, once tentative, now carried the weight and certainty of purpose, sounding a clarion call for others daring to embrace their own stories of transformation. Ethan, in his obstinate determination, embarks on a legal battle to reclaim what he perceives as his due, entirely unprepared for the formidable opposition his mother Rose now represents. In this courtroom drama, the familial ties are laid bare, exposing the underlying dynamics that drove each character to this point. Ethan, clutching the remnants of a bygone era, where his word was law and his expectations undisputed, finds himself unexpectedly besieged by a woman transformed, fueled by a newfound clarity and the support of those who had also freed themselves from similar shackles. Legal disputes, especially those involving family, have a unique capacity to dredge up emotions and latent conflicts. Ethan hinges his case on an assumed moral high ground, perhaps expecting the court to view his actions as benevolent intentions meant to secure his mother's future. But Rose, having meticulously prepared for this eventuality, employs logical reasoning and legality to dismiss his claims. Her arguments are precise, her voice unwavering as she elucidates her right to self-determination, a right underpinned by both statutory support and the moral weight of her own personal journey. Family members watching these proceedings are caught in a whirlwind of tension and reflection, with alliances quietly tested as the court drama unfolds. Ethan carries the burden of proof, yet Rose's defense dismantles his assertions, systematically invoking both the letter and spirit of the law that protects one's autonomy. Accompanying her is a quiet steadiness, one strengthened by allies who earlier, like Sharon, had confessed the achievement of reclaiming their lives from their familial oppressors. They anchor her not just as witnesses but as silent reminders of what is at stake: freedom, respect, and the dismantling of generational submission. Legal documents become the battlefield where strategic logic confronts emotional entitlement. Rose's legal counsel, perhaps underestimated by Ethan, crafts a narrative that underscores her indisputable right to make decisions concerning her own property and life choices. Unforgettable is the moment when her attorney systematically refutes the entitlement of filial duty weaponized by Ethan, a duty that had been misconstrued as justification for coercion. Observers of this courtroom drama are reminded of the struggles many face when asserting their rights against familial imposition. Each line of defense Rose presents reverberates beyond the courtroom, resonating with those who have felt similarly eclipsed by overpowering expectations. Through logical arguments and a firm grasp of her entitlements, Rose emerges not just as a defendant, but as an emblem of personal autonomy and strength. The judge, impartial and circumspect, recognizes the depth of the conflict but must abide by the law's tenets. The judiciary's role in these matters is to mediate not just legal disputes but familial injuries perpetuated by misunderstanding and dominance. As the gavel falls, it carries with it a message, a reinforcement of the law's intention to protect the rights of each individual, reinforcing an age-old principle that not even blood ties can surpass one's claim to autonomy. Ethan, faced with inevitable judgment, is brought to the realization that neither force of will nor tradition can legitimize unfounded claims. The legal landscape concludes in favor of Rose, acknowledging her right to govern her own life, and thus disentangling her from the familial binds that had long attempted to tether her. In doing so, the court acknowledges the complex interplay of family dynamics, the essential necessity of consent and communication, and crucially, the empowerment that comes when one successfully stands their ground. Back at home, the reverberations of the courtroom truth are felt deeply within the family. Extended family members vocal about tradition now confront their own perceptions and biases, grappling with the reality that their ways are neither infallible nor universally applicable. Rose's vindication represents a rallying moment, an invocation for many to rethink and perhaps redefine what respect and duty signify within families. The legal battle and its conclusive triumph have not only solidified Rose's newfound independence, but have also become a pivotal point for all tangled within her sphere, instigating a broader contemplation of agency, family, and the necessity of boundaries. It becomes clear that Rose's journey is not one of typical revenge but rather one of emotional transcendence. Through legal means, she has spelled out a framework, one that invites others to construct their narratives of freedom and dignity. Her hard-won wisdom, echoed by the supportive chime of empowered women, insists that leadership first begins with self-mastery. And so, in the aftermath of her legal victory, Rose embodies an enduring truth that what empowers one inevitably liberates many. With her legal victory freshly imprinted in the family's collective memory, Rose now steps into a long-anticipated chapter where autonomy and authenticity shape every facet of her daily life. In the tender silence of her own home, no longer encumbered by the binary expectations of tradition and duty, a perceptible tranquility envelops her existence. Every corner, every space within these walls now breathes the gentle assurance of self-governance. The absence of family-imposed dictates creates a vacuum initially marked by an unusual quietude, ushering Rose into a realm abundant in choices. Untangled from the superimposed obligations, she begins to design a life defined by her own rhythms and desires. Her mornings no longer succumb to the hurry of others' schedules, but find dawn in leisurely moments of reflection, accompanied by a steaming cup of coffee, a personal ritual that affords her the simple pleasure of greeting the day on her own terms. Such indulgence is not a rebellion but a reclamation of her rightful agency over the mundane orchestration of her time, fostering a profound sense of serenity. The freedom realized in the smaller, seemingly trivial acts creates ripples of change across the broader landscape of Rose's perception. Dinner is savored slowly, each bite an echo of her newfound liberty without the rush to meet someone else's fleeting whims or demands. Her evenings are spent in the company of books that have collected dust on her shelves, unread in the years devoted to others, each page turned rekindling the fierce intellect she feared was lost to the domestic noise. This newfound autonomy extends deeper still, invigorating her interactions beyond her once closed doors. Friendships with women like Sharon evolve into treasured connections, bound not by the necessity of polite gatherings, but by mutual respect, empowerment, and a vibrant exchange of aspirations. These conversations, rich with shared stories and laughter, encapsulate a network of resilience and wisdom, reminding Rose that true companionship is a dialogue built on the delicate balance of give and take, where each party exists as an equal participant in the shared journey. Amidst this newfound independence, Rose acknowledges the quiet hum of introspection that echoes through her house. The absence of familial conflict clears space for truth, allowing the broader tapestry of her life to reflect on the legacy she wishes to cultivate. It is here that she begins the delicate art of fermentation, preserving not only the literal fruits of her labor from her garden, but also curating the intangible essence of self-worth and dignity in her heart. Each jar is a testament to her past, transformed and sealed with care, promising renewal and new beginnings. This routine of self-determined living nurtures within Rose a steady composition of identity, a narrative rich in integrity, and the courage to remain true to herself. It's a life where the echo of her footsteps, the rustle of the wind through open windows, and the soft murmur of her own harmonized thoughts form a symphony unswayed by the discord of others' expectations. She is reminded every day as the sun spills light through her windows that empowerment does not necessarily come from grand gestures but is often crafted through the quiet persistence of what she chooses to cultivate. Rose's transformation and embrace of authenticity become an unspoken invitation for those around her to redefine their relationships, challenging them to envision family as an ecosystem of mutual respect rather than a hierarchy. The journey does not render her isolated but rather places her in a community wider, more understanding and inclusive. Her home, once a battleground for familial dominance, now becomes a sanctuary of growth, where emotional ties can be reknitted, this time with the soft thread of acceptance and understanding. She can offer advice to Ethan in moments now absent of control, instead fostering an environment conducive to mutual growth, where differences are accepted with grace and maturity. It is the dawn of this reality that extends her perceptions beyond traditional confines, tapping into the authentic power one possesses when choices originate from the soul. The epitome of Rose's triumph, therefore, lies not in the absence of conflict but in her relentless pursuit of a life where her voice resounds with clarity and empowerment, establishing a personal revolution every day with the courage to live her truth. Herein lies both Rose's compelling power and a timeless truth. In living autonomously bound by the authenticity of one's own journey, one inevitably liberates many more, empowering them to envision and inhabit the lives they truly desire. Her tale then etches itself as an enduring narrative amidst the broader dialogue of familial dynamics and personal freedom, offering inspiration for everyone to engrave their own story of courage on the vast canvas of life. In the quiet aftermath of a transformed battlefield, the air now seems lighter, unburdened by the residual tension of past conflicts. Ethan's return, humbled and contemplative, marks the beginning of a new chapter nestled within Rose's ongoing narrative of strength and autonomy. This time, his presence carries a weight not of unwelcome authority, but of humility, the kind forged through personal reflection and a desire to mend the fabric of familial bonds that once seemed irreparably frayed. Ethan approaches with a tentative sincerity, acknowledging the errors of his past. His prior attempts to exert control and material dominance dissolve into recollections of misplaced intentions and misunderstood love. Here, acknowledgement becomes the cardinal virtue that facilitates not only his own growth, but serves as a symbolic olive branch towards Rose. He admits the folly of expecting compliance without consensual dialogue, recognizing that true familial unity is woven intricately with threads of respect, appreciation, and mutual understanding. For Rose, this moment is not merely one of personal vindication, but an opportunity to test the newly fortified boundaries she has established. The path to this reconciliation is not paved with any sense of vindictiveness or emotional volatility. Rather, it is marked by a mature quietude. She listens, allowing Ethan's words to breathe within the space once filled with unspoken resentment. In this exchange, an implicit lesson on the dynamics of respect unfolds, a testament to how deeply ingrained societal structures can be unraveled by conscious choices and enlightened dialogues. Within the sphere of their interaction, one perceives an evolution in familial dynamics. The layers of misunderstanding and unarticulated familial expectations begin shedding, allowing more authentic connections to emerge. The psychological undercurrent here is significant. Ethan's transformation is less about seeking forgiveness and more about forging a deeper understanding, a mutual redefinition of their family dynamics, where respect becomes the cornerstone rather than control. Ethan's journey of introspection reveals uncomfortable truths about the roles imposed by family and society, truths Rose had long confronted and conquered. The emergence of empathy in Ethan's approach fosters an atmosphere conducive to authentic reconciliation. Still, Rose asserts her narrative with patience and resilience, confident that genuine transformation within a relationship is not instantaneous, but an ongoing process nurtured by consistent, respectful interaction. As Rose articulates her perspective, it becomes clear that her journey has been as much about empowering others as it has been about asserting her strength. She reaffirms the value of choice, reminding Ethan that individuality within familial bonds does not mean disconnect, but rather an invitation to engage genuinely. This revelation ushers in newfound respect from Ethan, not just for Rose's resilience, but for the broader implications of her decisions in recharting the course of their family. Thus, this stage of reconciliation ushers in a new epoch of family dynamics where Rose, Ethan, and the larger family unit stand to redefine their roles, not through hierarchy or manipulation, but through understanding and shared growth. The realization that familial relationships thrive on the foundation of mutual respect and individual autonomy transcends the confines of their immediate family to reflect a broader societal truth, one that advocates for compassion, respect, and dialogue over control and dominance. Through this lens, Ethan's return is symbolic, signifying the unraveling of generational patterns that have long dictated family interactions. It demonstrates the profound power held in relinquishing entrenched paradigms and embracing change as a catalyst for deeper connection. Ethan's intention to reconcile is not an end but a beginning, a platform from which both he and Rose can continue to build, guided by respect, understanding, and the quiet strength that comes with knowing one's worth in the familial tapestry. As the echoes of past misunderstandings fade, Rose's decisions stand resilient, etched into the narrative of a legacy that refuses to be defined by anything less than honor and empowerment. The narrative does not conclude with the mere act of reconciliation, but rather evolves into a narrative of continuous growth, inviting every member of the family to embark upon their own journey of self-discovery and respect within the collective unity. Such is the evolving story of family, a living chronicle responsive to the present, yet deeply influenced by the transformative power of the past. In the quiet sanctuary of her living room, Rose reflects on her newfound sense of self as her life begins to settle into a new rhythm. Surrounded by the familiar warmth of her home now under her decisive control, Rose feels an unaccustomed lightness. Each object in the room stands as a testament to her journey and patient determination to create a life honoring both respect and autonomy. The sun filters softly through the curtains, casting gentle shadows that dance across her space, mirroring the gentle dance of reconciliation unfolding within her family. As she spends time with her grandchildren, their unfiltered joy and curiosity breathe fresh life into her heart. The once tense interactions, strained by unspoken expectations and long-standing hierarchy, have transformed into moments of pure connection. No longer burdened by the sense of obligation that had once colored her every interaction, Rose delights in their presence. Her relationship with them now thrives on mutual respect, where they each engage with one another as individuals rather than through the imposed roles that family often demands. With the firm boundaries she established in place, Rose creates an environment where understanding takes precedence over authority. Her grandchildren, perceptive and receptive, respond warmly to this shift. In the past, familial bonds were often accompanied by the weight of unvoiced resentments and power struggles. Now they embrace each moment as an opportunity to learn and grow together, driven by curiosity rather than duty. This openness extends to Ethan, whose humbled return and newfound respect serve as a catalyst for collective healing. Ethan finds himself re-examining his role not only as a son but as a parent. He witnesses the positive effects of Rose's steadfastness on his children, realizing that their respect for their grandmother stems from her insistence on honest engagement and autonomy. He sees the power of releasing control and allowing relationships to flourish in the light of shared growth and deepened understanding. This revelation encourages him to guide his family with empathy rather than the suppressive need to dictate. The transformation within the family offers all its members a chance to redefine their relationships, shifting from conditional expectations to intrinsic appreciation. Rose's example becomes a guiding light, highlighting the impact of embracing one's worth and the profound influence it can have on dismantling antiquated family dynamics. This journey is neither simple nor linear, but is characterized by moments of vulnerability and courage, virtues that Rose now infuses into every interaction. The once difficult dialogues with Ethan gradually soften as they explore new ways to communicate, rooted in equal footing rather than imbued with familial resentment and unchecked power dynamics. Ethan learns that in admitting past errors, liberation resides. Forgiveness is not just a familial balm but a personal one, restoring his integrity and his relationship with his mother. This renewed understanding is further enriched by the authenticity they've cultivated, inspiring a refreshed family narrative fueled by respect and acceptance. Rose acknowledges the power inherent in her journey, a journey that defies patterns of enabling generational errors, offering a blueprint for other families, determined to address corrosive dynamics. Her story is a lesson in patience, each small victory building upon the last until her world stands firm and empowered, distinctly her own. The shadows cast by past misunderstandings have dissipated, leaving only the bright possibility of the future, filled with relationships rooted in choice and personal accountability. This reverberation of new energy extends beyond her home into the community, creating ripples of change, encouraging those around her to question, engage, and ultimately redefine their spaces. Through shared stories and experiences, her journey becomes part of a wider tapestry of women and men choosing a different path, one paved by mutual respect and continual self-discovery within the familial unit. And so Rose's life unfolds within this new context of self-respect. Not constrained by guilt or bound by obligation, she moves forward confidently into what lies ahead. Her life chronicles the power of an individual who dares to assert their worth, who refuses to be constrained by expectation, and who embraces change as a force for creating a harmonious and fulfilling existence. In her story, readers and listeners find not only a source of inspiration and camaraderie, but a beacon of hope, reminding each one of the potential for renewed strength and connection when individuals choose to live authentically within their familial bonds. The silence now enveloping Rose's world was not one of emptiness, but rather a profound and deliberate choice. As she closed the door on a chapter burdened with expectation and self-doubt, the echoes of past confrontation transformed into a subdued symphony of self-reclamation. Each quiet moment served as a stark reminder of her journey, a canyon carved by persistent strength and unyielding resolve. As the dust settled, Ethan found himself standing on the periphery of a life he once held in a grip of assumed certainty. His voice, once a weapon of coercion, now disappeared into the wind, and his presence, which once encapsulated dominance, faded into the shadows of humility. The weight of unearned authority melted away under the radiant light of his mother's quiet triumph. She stood alone now, unencumbered, holding nothing but echoes that told tales he'd not been ready to hear. Yet in her solitude there was more than mere absence. There was renewal. For Rose, victory was not about the act of vanquishing. It was about the subtle shift from noise to silence, from chaos to calm. Her strength lay in the serenity she embraced, a transformative silence that pervaded her world and brought with it an awareness most profound. In those silent spaces she found her true voice, one that demanded no validation nor external confirmation. Silence had indeed become her kingdom, an unassailable fortress built on the ruins of past subjugation. And you witness to these unraveling threads of familial betrayal and redemption. What would you have sacrificed for such peace? Could you too have endured the clamor of defiance for the chance of serenity's embrace? In the depth of introspection, answers emerge not as declarations, but as whispers guiding one towards a reflection of their own silent battles fought and those yet to be fought. In this new realm, Rose no longer feared the echoes that filled her once crowded home. Instead, they became a testament to her enduring spirit and an invitation for contemplation, both hers and theirs. The once daunting silence turned into a revered ally, a canvas upon which she painted her newfound existence with strokes of dignity and enlivened grace. Somewhere between the fractured moments, Ethan learned to listen not just with his ears but with an openness of heart he'd never before considered. There, within the pauses, he discovered the language of consequence, a piercing vocabulary that spoke volumes in quietude. It was the sound of lessons learned, not spoken with vehemence but imprinted within the space of absence, asking nothing, yet altering everything. In this narrative of silent retribution, some endings are not loud or brash. They whisper in the stillness, offering space for breath and thought. And so, a once chaotic sphere slows to reflect the beauty inherent in moments of reflective stillness. Perhaps some wisdom emerges not from repetitive assertion, but from deeply seated serenity that only silence can bestow. Just as the soft unfurling of a new dawn, this gentleness does not scream its arrival. Yet it changes the day in profound and inescapable ways. As Rose looked ahead, the path unfurling before her was not dictated by passed-down expectations or unsolicited demands. It was paved in resilience, with every step an acknowledgement of her intrinsic right to define her narrative, free from the shackles of inherited obligation. As light poured into her once shrouded world, shadows retreated, making way for an expanse of radiant possibility. Do any of us truly understand the power of restraint, the serenity of quiet triumph? Could we too embrace the embrace of sanctuary within the sound of silence, learning to read between the unspoken words that speak to our inner truths? Perhaps the greatest changes come not in the clamor of epiphanies, but in the gentle whispers of acknowledgement and acceptance, guiding us toward a place of ethereal peace. In conclusion, some stories do not find closure with conclusive dialogues or conclusive chapters. Instead, they meander quietly into sunset hues, symbolic in their elusive language and transformative in their silent significance. Here, wisdom rests in the comfort of tranquility, teaching that some treasures are uncovered not through excavation but through gentle revelation, a quiet revolution that changes the world, not with a roar, but with the quiet certainty of a new Dawn.